I'm working on number 84 from the review. We have 9 plus 7i minus 6 minus 2i. So you have 9 plus 7i. You have to distribute the negative 1. So it's minus 6 plus 2i. So 9 minus 6 is 3. And then 7i plus 2i gives you 9i. So that's number 84. 85. We're doing number 85, so we have 3 plus 11i plus 10 plus 9i. And if you want to take off the parentheses, you can. So you have 3 plus 11i plus 10 plus 9i. You're going to combine the real part, so 3 plus 10 gives you 13, 11i plus 9i gives you 20i. So that's number 84. 86, you have 1 minus 9i, and then you have 3 plus 2i. And then what you're doing here is you are going to use the FOIL method. 1 times 3 gives you 3. 1 times 2i gives you plus 2i. Negative 9i times 3 gives you negative 27i. Negative 9i times 2 gives you negative 18i, and it's I times I, so it's I squared. So you have 3, and then 2i minus 27 is negative 25i, and then since I squared is negative, 1 times negative 1, so you have 3 minus 25i plus 18. 3 plus 18 gives you 21 minus 25i. Number 88, you have to simplify the quotient. So you have 4 minus 6i divided by 2i. So you're going to multiply by the conjugate. In this case, it's negative 2i. Negative 2i. So basically, you're multiplying 2i times negative 2i. What you get is negative 4i squared. And then here you have negative 2i times 4, which gives you 8i. 2i times negative 6i, or I'm sorry, negative 2i times 4 gives you negative 8i. And then negative 2i times negative 6i gives you positive 12i squared. And remember that I squared is going to be equal to negative 1. So you have negative 8i plus 12 times negative 1 divided by negative 4 times negative 1. And what you're going to have is, I'm going to have to move this here. What I have is, it's negative 12 minus 8i, and then we're going to divide by 4. So negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3, and negative 8i divided by 4 is negative 2i. Number 89 is another problem in which you have to multiply by the conjugate. The conjugate of 1 plus 5i, which is 1 minus 5i. And of course, you multiply 1 minus 5i. And you're going to have to do the FOIL method for the numerator. So let me do that. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times negative 5i gives you negative 10i squared. Negative 3i times 1 gives you negative, I'm sorry, that was negative 10i. I apologize, it's negative 10i. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times negative 5i is negative 10i. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3i. And then negative 3i times negative 5i gives you 15i squared. Divided by, and we notice anytime that we have 1 plus 5i and 1 minus 5i, in other words, we have the same a value, this case be 1, and the same, and the difference in b values, the middle term is going to cancel. So you have 1 times 1, and then 5i times negative 5i, which gives you negative 25i squared. Remember that I squared is equal to negative 1, and then we're going to also combine like terms. So negative 10i minus 3i gives you negative 13i. And then you have 15 times negative 1. We know that here it's negative 1. That's negative 1, so it's 1 minus 25 times negative 1. So you have 2 minus 13i minus 15 divided by, this right here would be positive when you multiply, and this would be 26. So 2 minus 15 gives you negative 13 minus 13i, and since you're dividing by 26, 13 over 26, 13 times 2 is 26, so this is actually negative 1/2 minus 1/2 I. We're going to go ahead and do number 90. So we have 90, and it's x squared plus 9 equals 0. And since we know we're gonna solve this equation, and we're going to use a quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Remember that you need to identify a, which in this case it's 1, b, which is 0, and then c, which is 9. So go ahead and substitute into this quadratic formula. So we have 0 plus or minus square root b squared is 0 minus 4 times a times c, which is 9, divided by 2 times a. In this case, it's 1. So we have plus or minus square root negative 4 times 1 times 9 gives you negative 36 divided by 2. The square root of 36 times the square root of negative 1 over 2. The square root of 36 is 6 plus or minus 6. And the square root of negative 1 is I divided by 2. So that gives you 3i. Plus or minus 3i. Now number 91. We have 5x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 0. We know that a is equal to 5. We know that b is equal to negative 2. And we know that c is equal to 1. And we know that the formula is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. So we have negative b, so that's going to be plus 2. Plus or minus square root, and we know that b is negative 2, so I'm going to write negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is 1, divided by 2 times a, which in this case, it's going to be 10. Because 2 times 5 gives you 10. So you have 2 plus or minus square root, negative 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 5 is 20 over 10. So we have 2 plus or minus square root. 4 minus 20 is negative 16 divided by 10. Okay, so you have 2 plus or minus square root of 16 times the square root of -1 divided by 10. The square root of 16 is 4, so you have 2 plus or minus 4. Square root of -1 is I, and you're dividing by 10. So this simplifies. 2 divided by 10 is 1/5. 4 divided by 10 is divisible by 2, so it's 2I over 5. Okay, the next topic was quadratic. We're going to go ahead and do number 94. So number 94, you have x squared minus 100 is less than 0, and the topic here is quadratic inequalities. So what you're going to do first is you're going to set it up as an equation. So you have x squared minus 100 equals 0. And then what you have to do is you're going to factor and find the factors of 100. That would add up to be 0. We notice that it's going to be -10 times 10 because that's going to give us 0. So you have x minus 10 times x plus 10 equals 0. So you have x minus 10 equals 0, and you have x plus 10 equals 0. So you're going to add 10 to both sides. So you have x equals 10, and over here you're going to subtract 10 to both sides, and you have x equal -10. These are called critical values. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and do a number line. I suggest you write 0. This is 1. And I'm going to say that this is, I'm sorry, let me erase that. Let me go backwards. I'm going to say that this is 10. And this is -10. And this should have been 10. So now we're going to check our critical values. And we notice that there is no equal sign, so you're going to have a circle here. And you know that your solution will either be greater than 10 or in between -10 and 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check 0. How do I check 0? If this red portion is an answer, I'm going to check one of them, and I'm going to check 0. And here we have 0 squared minus 100. And is that less than 0? And I would have to say yes, it's true. So your answer will be most likely between -10 and 10. So now what we need to do is try, let's say, -11 squared minus 100, and check if that's less than 0. And we probably want to check 11 squared minus 100, and then check if that's less than 0, because remember 11 is on this side, and we notice that -11 is on to the left of -10. And 11 squared is 121 minus 100 is 21. Is 21 less than 0? That would be false. And we have 121 minus 100, so it would be 21 less than 0. That would be false. So our answer is x greater than -10 and x less than 10. You also see it like this. X is less than 10, but yet it's greater than -10. Of course, there's no equal sign, so those would be the possible answers. We are going to do 96. We're going to go ahead and do 96. So we have 96, and we have x squared plus 3x minus 10 is less than 0. So we're going to first make it into a quadratic equation. X squared plus 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. And then we're going to solve by factoring. We're going to find the factors of negative 10, and you notice that it will have to be 5 times negative 2. 5 times negative 2 gives you negative 10, and it also gives you 3, which we have there. So I have the factors are x plus 5 times x minus 2 is equal to 0. So I have x plus 5 is equal to 0. X minus 2 is equal to 0. You subtract 5 from both sides. So you have x equal negative 5. That's our first critical value. The next one is you add 2. So you have x equals 2. So once again, these are called the critical values, and they're going to help us. They're going to help us to find the solution. They're going to help us to find the solution for this quadratic inequality. So I'm going to go ahead and do the number line. You have 0, 1, 2, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is negative 5. And I'm going to go ahead and extend the line. And so there's no equal sign. We know that these critical values will not be part of the solution because there's no equal line for the inequality. So we're going to check 3. I would like to check 0, and we can check negative 6. And I'm going to go ahead and explain why. Because we know that 3 falls after 2. I know that negative 6 falls after negative 5. And in between negative 5 and 2 is 0. So if any of these points are false, it automatically makes that region false. So I'm going to go ahead and check. So we have 3 squared plus 3 times 3 minus 10. And we're going to check if that's less than 0. So we have 9 plus 9 minus 10 less than 0. So that's 18 minus 10 is 8. Is 8 less than 0? I would say that's false. So automatically this is false. I'm going to try 0 now. I have 0 squared plus 3 times 0 minus 10 less than 0. And this is going to be true because you end up, this is 0. You end up with negative 10 less than 0. That's true. So this part is true. Now we're going to go ahead and check negative 6. So we have negative 6 squared plus 3 times negative 6 minus 10. And we're going to check if that's less than 0. Negative 6 squared is 36. 6 times 3 is negative 18 minus 10. I know 36 minus 18 is 18. 18 minus 10 is 8. And we know that 8 is not less than 0, so that's false. So this right here is false. So what is our answer? What is our solution? X greater than negative 5 and x less than 2. You can also see it as x less than 2, and it's also greater than negative 5. You can also see it like that. 6.1 6.1, and it's square root functions and as inverse. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do number 4, and it says find the inverse of each function, determine whether each inverse is a function. So number 4, you have f of x equals 2x squared minus 8. So you're going to go ahead and replace the f of x with y. So y equals 2x squared minus 8. To find the inverse, you will have to switch the x and the y. So you have x equals 2y squared minus 8. And what you're going to do now is you're going to solve for y. So you're going to add 8 to both sides. So you have x plus 8 is equal to 2y squared divided by 2. And I'm going to go ahead and switch this. So we have y squared is equal to x plus 8 over 2. And you're going to get the square root of both sides. And so you have y is equal to the square root of x plus 8 divided by 2. And for the exam, all I'm checking is whether you know how to convert the function f of x equals 2x squared minus 8 into how to convert it to its inverse. So that's what I'm checking. So please do number 4 under 6.1, and we're going to also follow this by doing number 7. So for number 7, remember we're doing number 7. Number 7, we have f of x equals 2x minus 3 to the second power. So what you need to do first is convert it as y equals parentheses 2x minus 3 squared. And then what you have to do with x and y is you have to switch the variables, or switch, for example, y is going to be x, and now we have 2y minus 3 squared. And in order for us to isolate y, we have to get the square root of both sides. So you have the square root of x is equal to 2y minus 3, because the parentheses squared and the square root are going to, in essence, cancel. So now you add 3. So you have 2y is equal to the square root of x plus 3. And of course, the last step is to divide by 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the expression. So what you have is you have 2 divided by 2 is y. So you're left with y equals the square root of x divided by 2 plus 3 divided by 2. Okay, we're going to go ahead and work on 6.3. And this section had to do with transformations. And 21, it's asking you to graph y equals the square root of x plus 1 minus 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do it here on the side. I'm going to sketch it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use transformations to graph this. So I'm going to first start off with the parent function, which is, this is the parent function. Now, the plus 1, you would think would shift to the right, but it actually shifts to the left. And the minus 2 shifts it down 2. So I'm just going to kind of estimate. We have 1, 2, then we go over 1. So your new graph should look like this. Went too far there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do number, and that was the answer for 21. Let's go ahead and do 22. So I'm going to do 22 right here, and we have y equals the square root of x minus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and write down, I don't know why I switched these, but this is y and this is x. I apologize. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. So this is y and this is x. And we know that this is the parent function. And we would think that we would shift to the left, but we're actually shifting to the right 1 unit. So I'm going to use red to show you the new function, okay? So that would be the new function. So let me go ahead and highlight so you know that is the transformation, the function. So that's it, okay? Also for this. The one that's highlighted is the new function, or the function that we're trying to graph. Okay, that's 22. 23. I'm going to go ahead and do it here. 23, and I have y is equal to negative square root of x plus 3. So let me go ahead and sketch the y-axis, sketch the x-axis, and then of course this is the parent function. The plus 3 is going to shift it to the left 3 units. And the minus is going to reflect it over the x-axis. So it should look something like this. So let me go ahead and highlight the new function. And that's what you have to do for 21, 22, and 23. For 25, it says describe the transformation from the parent function. So we have y is equal to the square root of x plus 2 plus 5. So I'm going to describe it. The graph will shift to the left and move up 5 units, okay? That's for 25. It's really important that you know how to describe it in written form, because you're gonna have some problems like that. Y equals the square root of negative 4x, and I wrote that radical sign too far. So negative 4x plus 10. So the graph will reflect over the y-axis. It will also move up 10 units, and horizontally compress 4 units. Okay? That's 27. 29, it says explain how to transform the graph square root of x to produce the graph shown. What is the function shown in the graph? Well, what we have here, and I'm going to try to sketch it to the best of my ability, we have 29. We have, it's actually in quadrant 4. I know that it is shifted to the right 1, 2, 3, and I know it's shifted down 1. It seems like it may be somehow affected here. So I'm going to do the best that I can here. I'm going to say y equals, if it's going to reflect over the x-axis, then I know that I'm going to have a negative square root x, and since it's going to shift to the right 3 units, it's going to be minus 3, and since it goes down 1 unit, it's going to be minus 1. So that would probably be the best answer that I can give for this problem. Okay. Before we finish the review, whatever problems I went over in the review, those are the problems that I'm going to hold you accountable for. Right now we're in the last section. It's actually 6.5. It's solving square root equations. So I'm probably just going to do 2 problems out of this section. I'm going to start with 36. And I have 2 plus the square root of x plus 5 equals 4. Remember, we want to have the square root by itself, so we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So what I'm left with is the square root of x plus 5 is equal to 4 minus 2, which is 2. Then I'm going to square the left side and the right side. So I have x plus 5 is equal to 4. Because remember, the square root and the square is going to cancel, so you have x plus 5 is equal to 2 to the second power. Subtract 5 from both sides since we're trying to isolate the x by itself. So we have x equal negative 1. Remember that you always want to check. So you have 2 plus the square root of negative 1 plus 5. So we have 2 plus the square root of 4. And so we have 2 plus 2, and we know that that's going to be 4. So that does check. All right, the next one, 37. We have 3 times the square root, and we have 2x plus 6 is equal to 18. And once again, we're solving for x, and we notice we're multiplying here, so we have to divide by 3. So you have the square root of 2x plus 6 is equal to 18 divided by 3 is 6. Go ahead and square the left side and square the right side. So remember, when you square a square root, you get 2x plus 6 is equal to 36. 6 times 6 is 36. Subtract 6 from both sides. So you have 2x equals 36 minus 6 is 30. Divided by 2, so x is equal to 15. Remember that you always want to check, especially there might be extraneous answers. So you have 3 times the square root of 2 times 15 plus 6. 3 times the square root, 2 times 15 is 30 plus 6. 3 times the square root of 36. And we're checking if that comes out to be 18. And I want to say that the square root of 36 is 6. 3 times 6 gives you 18. It does check. let's go ahead and try 39. I know I wasn't planning to do 39, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So we have the square root of x plus 6 plus 2 is equal to x plus 6. So you notice that that 2, we don't want it there, so we're going to subtract 2 from 6. So you have the square root of x plus 6 is equal to, that's 0. And of course, I like to draw that line. So you have x, and then we have 6 minus 2 is 4. You have the square root here, so you're going to square it, and you're going to square it. And you notice when you square a square root, you have x plus 6 is equal to, this is x plus 4 to the second power, so it's actually x plus 4 times x plus 4. You're going to have to do the FOIL method right there on the right side. So you have x plus 6 equals x times x is x squared, x times 4 is 4x, 4 times x gives you 4x, and then 4 times 4 gives you 16. So you have x plus 6 equals x squared, combine like terms, plus 16. And since we want everything to be on one side, we're going to have to subtract x, subtract 6, subtract x, subtract 6. So what do we have? We have x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. And we're going to solve this by factoring. So you have to find the factors of 10. And you notice that the factors of 10 that add up to be 7 are going to be x plus 2 and x plus 5 equals 0, right? That's 0. So we have x equals negative 2 and x equals negative 5. And now our last step is to check. How do you check? You're going to substitute back into the equation. So you have square root negative 2 plus 6 plus 2 equals negative 2 plus 6. In this case, it's 4. So you have the square root of 4 plus 2. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 2 gives you 4. So negative 2 works. So now I'm running out of room, so we're going to try 5, and I'm going to try to squeeze it here. We have the square root of 5, negative 5 plus 6 plus 2. So it's actually the square root of 1 plus 2, which should give us 3. Now, if you look at the right side, it's negative 5 plus 6 because it's x plus 6. And that gives you 1. These two are not the same. So this is an extraneous answer. Extraneous answer. So it won't be an answer. So your answer is negative 2.